is proud to present Molson Hockey Night in Canada.
It's hockey's last line of defense. What takes place in this 4 by 6 foot area ultimately decides the outcome of every game. To guard the net requires unique mental and physical protection, a suit of armor outside and in. But it's those who stand up best under the heat who are able to mask the pressure. And for 75 years, netminders in Toronto and Montreal have done just that. In hockey's infancy, Montreal's George Vezina was Mr. Consistency. Hall of Famer George Hainsworth proved his worth, tending goal for the Habs and Leafs. Broda and Dernan in the 40s, no better goaltending battle. And in the 50s, the innovator Jacques Plante grabbed the spotlight on and off the ice. Toronto's golden oldie Johnny Bower poked holes in the opposition's attack through the 60s, while it was Ken Dryden who stood tall for the Habs throughout the 70s. But now the mantle's been passed to hockey's two premier netminders.
Right in front of the net. Oh, what a save by Waugh. Another shot. Waugh stopped it and scrambled Waugh down. How can he keep that puck out? I don't know. Paul Ranheim, a break from center. Ranheim against Fuhr, and what a stop!
Now Wesley. No shot on the net. Right in front. What a save by Patrick Waugh of Craig Janney.
Going in on goal. Deep shoot. Half save by Grant Fuhr. Oh, brother, what a save that was.
It's been a while since fans at Maple Leaf Gardens have witnessed goaltending the way Grant Fuhr has been providing it. By his own admission, the 5-time Stanley Cup winner is playing as well as he ever has. Manning the crease tonight for the Montreal Canadiens is 2-time Vezina Trophy winner Patrick Waugh, certainly hockey's most complete goaltender. To witness greatness in goal at both ends tonight is simply an added bonus to what is hockey's greatest natural rivalry. From Maple Leaf Gardens, Toronto meets Montreal. Maple Leaf Gardens is always a sea of blue and white, but when the Canadians arrive, add a little red in there as well, and that buzz you hear in the air, and nights like this make all of us wish the Leafs and Canadians would meet a little bit more often. Good evening and welcome to Molson Hockey Night in Canada on CBC from the Gardens in Toronto. I'm Ken Daniels, and outside this building tonight, scalpers are getting between $400 and $500 for a seat down here in the Golds. It's their kind of night. For the Canadians, it's been their kind of season, still battling for first place overall despite all the injuries. As for the Maple Leafs, they're fighting for their playoff lives. It has been a busy 24-plus hours in the National Hockey League, and it all began late yesterday afternoon. St. Louis sending sour center Adam Oates and his contract hassles to Boston for center Craig Janney and defenseman Stefan Quintal. Oates unhappy leaving Hull, but happy to be a Bruin. He made his debut this afternoon as Boston played host to the New Jersey Devils. Oates picked up 2 assists wearing number 12 for Boston, but the Bruins still came out on the short end of this one. Boston outshot the Devils by a count of 42-22, but still lost it by a final score of 6-4. Stevens with 2 for New Jersey. Also this afternoon, the LA Kings in Pittsburgh. LA with Gretzky, Pittsburgh minus Mario. It was a 3-3 tie with 42.5 seconds left. Donnelly to Robitaille, his 5th goal in 2 games. That was the game winner very late as the Kings defeat Pittsburgh by a final of 4-3. Gretzky with 2 for Los Angeles. Mario Lemieux has been fined $1,000, the maximum allowed by the league for criticism after Mario referred to the NHL as a garage league following a game January 26th in Washington. One other game this afternoon, Philadelphia at Quebec. The Nords now winless in 6. Mark Freer gave Philly a 3-0 second period lead, beating Tanner here for Ron Hextall, his 2nd shutout of the season. And believe it or not, for Hextall, hard to believe, just his 3rd career NHL shutout, the final 3-0. As our tradition continues here tonight at Maple Leaf Gardens, another tradition continued today overseas, the Winter Olympic Games. Let's go live to France. Here's Ron Maclean.
Ken, thank you very much. We're live in the Savoie. Wish we could see your game. It sounds like a dandy. We know we did see a good one here at France today, featuring the home side against Canada in the opening game of these 16th Winter Olympics. A tremendous effort by Eric Lindros set up Dave Archibald in the 2nd period on the power play, giving Canada a 2-1 lead. The French were testy all through this game. They extend the lead less than 2 minutes later. Kent Mandeville scores from the slot as he jams it home on a great second effort. The Canadians nervously eke out a 3-2 win. 2 points is all they care about. Their first in the B pool, tied with Czechoslovakia, who won handsomely. Peter Rosel had 3 goals in that game for Czechoslovakia, and Team United won 8-1. And if you haven't seen this highlight, We thought we'd show you again from Thursday's practice. Cameraman Dennis Sitar caught this. Alexei Kovalev in blue and Vitaly Prokhorov in yellow. A big spat. Team United may be anything but as we follow the developments here. We're going to feature a report on Canada's 3-2 win on Inside Hockey tonight in our second intermission. From Mooche, back to Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto. Ken?
Thank you, Ron. And back here at Maple Leaf Gardens earlier this season, the Montreal Canadiens were on a tear. They were holding first place overall despite a cavalcade of injuries. But since that time, the Canadiens have struggled a bit. Just 3 wins in their past 10 games, but certainly a well-rested team. They've been given 2 days off by Pat Burns, who feels he's had to use his best players too often. 7 times this season, the Leafs have played on the road Friday and have come home to play a team Saturday. Last night, the Leafs pulled one out against Detroit at Joe Louis Arena. Game tied 3-3. 2:33 to play. Who else? Doug Gilmour in front to Glenn Anderson, who tips it by Greg Millen for the 4-3 Maple Leaf victory. So while the Leafs have gone for veteran leadership up front, the likes of Gilmour and Anderson, we've got our veterans on board tonight in the broadcast booth. Bob Cole, and joining me now, Harry Neale and Dick Irvin.
Well, thank you, Ken. A stranger comes to Toronto, and hopes are high with the Leafs, and they talk about 2 names, Gilmour and Anderson. Harry, they're doing quite a job for the Leafs.
Well, they're the only offense the Leafs have had lately. 41 points combined in the last 13 games ever since the arrival of Gilmour. And I'm sure Pat Burns has got pictures of these guys up in the Montreal dressing room saying, slow them down if we want to win.
Well, he's got defensive forwards, of course, in the main, and I'm sure Guy Carbonneau and Gilmour will go steady if Burns can arrange it.
Well, Guy Carbonneau, the best defensive center in the league, who's also talented enough offensively to scare you a little bit, will be playing with McPhee and Gilchrist, and I know Burns will like to get them out against Anderson and Gilmour if he can. But Burns is missing the other half of his 1-2 defensive punch with Brian Skrudland being out on the road, where he may not get his wish to have Carbonneau sitting on the lap of Anderson and Gilmour all night long. But that's the matchup to look for, and that'll be the best one of the night.
And some interesting matchups in all parts of the ice at Maple Leaf Gardens. Back to Ken.
You certainly have that right, Dick, including in goal. The 2 best goaltenders in the game, Patrick Waugh and Grant Fuhr, should be a classic confrontation. And speaking of classic confrontations, during our first period intermission, Don Cherry is always in the coach's corner, and during period number 2, at the end of the second, Doug Gilmour and Inside Hockey. So tonight, for fans across this vast nation, the tradition really does continue. From Maple Leaf Gardens, Pat Burns and his Montreal Canadiens meet Tom Watt's Maple Leafs. It's coast to coast on Molson Hockey Night in Canada on CBC.
Molson Hockey Night in Canada on CBC is brought to you by Molson Canadian, what beer's all about. By Ford of Canada, where quality is more than a commitment, quality is job one. And by Esso Associates and Imperial Oil. You're on your way with Esso.